retaining, retention time, and then resonance. An electron, if it loses the ability to jump from the orbital, then any interaction it has with any other atom, it's going to just lose all the radiation in it, and that's the only reason it's jumping, is because it gets excited from the radiation. And it's great that that doesn't happen, or else everything would be an empty vessel. All the energy would radiate out of everything if the electron did not have its definite ability to jump in the placements from its orbitals. It's hard to imagine why something wouldn't retain anything, but when people are like pulled down under, then that wouldn't be the question in that circumstance. So when you're anti-something, that means that you're like the opposite of it. So Pinhead, he's the perfect horror story because he shouldn't be here, and once he is here, the resonance of his body and the retaining effect all just capsize because he's like the linchpin for his plot. It's just like roadkill when you don't realize if the gravel, if it was made of microbes that had already deceased. You feel less guilty rolling over roadkill when it's dried out and pressed down, almost like a pancake, as opposed to when it is just like a roadkill that has its guts hanging out and it's juicy. You would feel more guilty running over that, but it would be typically the same. But it would be even more the same if you were just running over gravel and not even knowing it. The difference is you wouldn't know it. One of the best supervillains would be called a collector. I think this is what Hellraiser would be aiming to do, Pinhead, because he would be coming, and then the collection would be the region around him. So he would do it in all one fell swoop, raise hell, ostensibly. So everything would be like a giant net, and he would be like the middle point, the pull pin. So just like anything that is excited, it is moving, and so then that's where the electrons are like jumping off of its stable state. And so when Pinhead, if he came, he would be like the decoherence of the entire underworld, ostensibly. And so like, if you weren't moving, or if you were like, unconscious, then you wouldn't be decohering like to him, and so he wouldn't be able to suck anything out of you. So anything that would be excited is his like only thing that he's made in his focal point to aim at. So he decoheres it by straining it, like the ultraviolet light catastrophe. That's when all the light leaves out objects. What I was describing is actually important if it's something that you don't even recognize, but it's there the whole time. It's foolproof. 100% is fine tuning, where the fine tune of, I'll give myself for example. I have a eye floater in my eye, and it's like a kind of like a strand of hair. It's not my hair, and I'm not thinking that I have an eye floater that's a strand of hair. And it's just having to note because it's inside my eye on the outside more than half the time, which I should probably do something about that. Besides that side note, which actually probably adds on to the preconceived notion of fine tuning. So my eye floater is like a black kind of line, and it's inside my eye. You have optics in your eye. It's not fiber optics. It's like optics of whatever the material inside your eye is made of. And so when that pops, it pops for some people, like 1 out of, I can't give you a number because I just know it's popular. So like when it does pop, it is like black. So you see like a black thing every now and then. Oftentimes when it's snow outside, because it's white, and so it would contrast it, and so it just surfaces that much easier. But in other times when it surfaces is like if you're wearing dirty sunglasses or glasses where it's kind of like dots are cloudy in it, so it's kind of like diffracting from the thing in front of it, kind of like how my hair in front of my eye would be priming it to do that. But the glasses having little parts that are clouded in it excite the eye floater, so it pops out and is more visible because it's trying to decode the surrounding area. And when it's doing that, it's going off the fine-tuned structure of the arena. And that's how things, when they're fine-tuned, enact. It's like some people say the best noise is no noise. They're like, oh, it sounds so good, can you hear it? And then they're like, I don't hear anything, and they're like, exactly. But the white noise is always reverberating, just as everything is radiating. You don't see it glowing, but surely, but most definitely it is above 0 Kelvin. Anything above 0 Kelvin is radiating a form of black body radiation, even if it doesn't look like it's radiating. One of the worst tricks possible was if you could make someone who is schizophrenic the opposite of healing them, but make more people just like them so that they would feel as if it were normal to hear voices that weren't there. On the other hand, noises are happening all the time, and it's hard to disprove who can hear what, because at the end of the day, everyone's hard at hearing at some level. So it all started when I heard a laugh last night. It was in like a cornfield, but I felt it was like being directed at me and my friend who I was talking to. And then shortly thereafterwards, we heard like some whistles and stuff. It was really weird because it was kind of like in moments where you wouldn't think that should be happening, and it wasn't really an animal, and if it was like a human, it was like really like sinister. And that led into an event where like a mechanical device of his broke. His shed door, his trunk went off the line of his hydraulic system, and then a different hydraulic system broke of another guy who was near me. I don't know why that's happening, but it led to where my keys got locked in my car, and usually my back door on the right side it would be open because it's broken, so it doesn't really lock whenever you lock it. But then I locked it manually because I was in the city and scared, so I went and I manually locked it. So despite it being broken and able to be unlocked, like for the benefit of the doubt, if you lock your keys in your car, that would have been a safe. But since I was playing safe, it is locked entirely. And then since my spare key is somewhere that I can't get a ride to or walk to, I have to just wait for, I guess, my friend that I was speaking to. So in a full circle of that laugh, it was almost as if it had predicted all of this, and it was laughing at the moment that I'm describing this to the internet. And it is kind of weird because things that are sinister read information perfectly, and if it is like not on this earth, then it's in eternity, and for eternity, if it has all the information read, it could be laughing at things that didn't happen yet. It would always be the engineer's fault or the programmer's fault. So making a mistake is bad, but I've often thought how often, if I was perfect, what that might look like in the outcome for the ball being in my court. Well, I'd look kind of robotic because robots don't make mistakes. And so if there was a embodiment that sucked up all the resonance, then anything that was excited, having like an excitement, its stable state would be to be at its ground state, like in symmetry of Pinhead. You know, what would that look like? How many things would be biased if you had an artificial substitute? You would obviously know it would not be the authentic. The difference of a substitute is known as like artificial, especially if it's not inherently obvious from the get-go. But how much could you relate an artificial to a substitute if that's all you had? And if you could do that, could it make up for an origin? In a world of things that should go working, when one doesn't, it's left to a spare. And if you don't have a spare, then you may be left in despair. One thing that distinguishes a key feature from a thing that is a substitute would be the initial reaction before knowing you need a different one. If you don't know if the ball is in your court, sometimes when it isn't, you'll miss a layup.